believe I did coin the term Weath Through Health. I haven't seen it anywhere else, and it's a term I've been using since January, and frankly it's picking up a lot of traction. I think people are finding that it's an easy way to understand the changes that are taking place in the post-reform era China. I coined the term after reading and studying and thinking about China's 12th five-year plan. And for those who don't know, every 5 years China puts out a plan that maps out the future of the country, where they're going to be going economically, diplomatically, how they're going to engage with domestic issues, foreign policy issues, and it's really a roadmap for where the country is headed. And in reading this next five-year plan for coming up, there was something that kept jumping off the page at me, which was, I think China's leaders have internalized the idea that in order to be sustainable as a country, as an economy, as a society, they need to pay more attention to the health and welfare of the people, the country, the environment, and the economy. And it was through that I came up with the term Weath Through Health. If we sort of start at the top, we see that so much of the 12th five-year plan is focused on issues relating to healthcare and medical and pharma, and generally there is a desire on the part of the government to look after the health of the people, quite literally. We also see that they're looking at, very importantly, the health of the environment. So there's a huge focus in the 12th five-year plan on alternative energy, green tech, innovation in fuel generation and storage, anything that's going to help the environment, not only from proactive, but from a reactive point of view as well. It's well known that China's air, land, waterways are extremely polluted. A lot of this is the price that they're paying for 30 years of virtually unregulated manufacturing. A lot of this was dirty manufacturing. You know, a lot of the strides we've made in the West in cleaning up our air and land and water has come at the expense of China. We've basically shifted our dirty industries over there. But they've really hit a breaking point. And they know that without water for people to drink and land to grow the food and air that people can breathe without getting cancer, no matter what they do on an economic front, it's not going to be successful. So we see a large focus on the health of the environment. We also see a lot of focus from the 12th five-year plan on more equal distribution of China's newfound wealth. The government is very well aware that there are growing income disparities. They're very well aware that the average worker can no longer live on the wages that they once did. In a China that is growing wealthier, you know, comes inflation and increased costs for everyday living. So they're very focused on increasing wages across the board and increasing a more equal distribution of wealth throughout the whole country. And then finally, we also see them looking at a very concerted effort to develop the rest of the country in terms of moving industry further west, moving industry to places where it doesn't exist. And so those two I look at as sort of the health of society. As the Chinese would put it, the path to a harmonious society is the health of society in terms of income and living standards. And so we take this as a big picture view of where China is going in the next 5 years, which is Weath Through Health. I think that people both in the public and private sectors in China still look to the U.S. For leadership in technology, in best practices, in management. They're looking to us, for example, in terms of medical and pharma. You know, we still have the best research institutions, we still have the best universities, we still produce more new medicines and more patents than any other country in the world. And I think they very clearly see that there's an intelligence gap in terms of what they can do and what they want to do. And so they're certainly looking to the United States to come in and provide them with best practices, best technologies, the best equipment. And as they've done very successfully over the last 30 years, they want to absorb that information and internalize it and then sort of let it sprout anew domestically. Well, they can certainly start at our website, www.technomicasia.com, or they could certainly give myself a call in the home office. And I think the conversation that we're having most often with Fortune 1000 companies as well as SMEs is they're getting the sense that things are changing in China and that it's a new frontier, if you will. That the reform and opening era is coming to a close, if it's not closed already, and that China is looking to move up the value chain. And what we're really seeing is, even for companies who've been in China for a long time and have had success there, they're really having to reevaluate their position in China. For example, we have a home care products company that we're talking to that got caught flat-footed to the fact that more and more home care products and personal care products are being sold online in China than they are in bricks and mortars. So their entire business plan and how they've been operating in China for the better part of 20 years no longer applies. And they see it as a direct threat. So that's an example of, I think that the key message here is that Technomic is really working with these companies who may already be in China to reevaluate their position in the country. In light of the 12th five-year plan, in light of new labor laws, in light of the opening and in some cases closing of the Chinese market to certain products and certain product categories, you really have to rethink where you are in China. We did a study with the American Chamber of Commerce in Shanghai this year, and across the board we saw that U.S. executives have seen increased profits in China over the last year. They expect to continue growing in China. So the appetite for being in China is still very much there. The downside of what we learned is I think there's a newfound sense of confusion in corporate America over what the new rules are and where they fit in. And because you've been compliant for the last 10 years, and because your business has dovetailed with what the Chinese government wants to happen in China over the last 10 years, doesn't mean that that's going to hold true for the next 10 years. So we're seeing a increased reevaluation certainly from multinationals on their position in China. As it relates to SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises, we've definitely seen an increased appetite to enter the Chinese market. And that's a particularly fertile area, for example, in healthcare. You may have a $10, $20, $30 million company based out of, let's just say Atlanta. And they may have come up with a couple of new medical devices that are just taking the country by storm, but they haven't even thought about entering the Chinese market until recently. Now there's a golden opportunity for this company to take their device and their technology and partner with somebody in China to increase their market share, to gain a foothold in the country, and perhaps double, triple, quadruple the size of the company. So we're really seeing it from both ends. It's companies who've been in China for a long time are really moving quickly to reevaluate their position, and small to medium-sized enterprises who are not yet in China seem to be moving faster towards China, but with a caution sign held up. And it's very difficult unless you make China sort of the thing you think about all the time, as we do, to really get a feel for the scope of those changes and a feel for the scope of where you fit in. And that's really where I think the value of a Technomic comes in, having been on the ground there for the better part of 25 years, that we are attuned to those changes and we experience them every day. And we've been through the entire opening reform era, and we're here still, and we're going to be in this new era with China. Sure, it's the China Business Toolbox, Boston, and its focus is on healthcare in China. really one of the fastest growing categories of business development in China is anything to do with the healthcare industry. So we're talking about pharmaceuticals, medical devices, building new hospitals, building new elder care facilities. Contrary to popular belief, China actually has an aging population. It's not a young population. Part of that has to do with the 30 years of the one-child policy. And so, for example, China's probably going to need 300 million new beds for elderly people in the next 20 years. And they don't have the infrastructure and the expertise on how to build that system out. So if you are a pharmaceutical company, a biotech company, a medical device company, a medical insurance company, if your business in any way, shape, or form touches the healthcare field, this is your moment. And at the event, we're going to be presenting a broad view of what's happening in China in terms of healthcare and what the opportunities are there to sell into China, to manufacture and produce your goods in China, and to really create a cross-border healthcare juggernaut, U.S.-China healthcare juggernaut. That I think that the U.S. is in position to provide all of these things that China needs, and China can provide the market for these companies. And so we're going to have a great program of keynote speakers and panels discussing all the opportunities for healthcare in China. And really anybody who's interested in taking their business, their healthcare-related business into China, or investing in companies who are doing so, this is probably a good event for you to attend. I think that all of the things I've been talking about have a very positive bent to them, and so they should. But companies and people should also keep in mind that there are potential roadblocks in the way. And I think it's important to understand that as we look at the 5-year plan, well, we know how plans can often go. They look good on paper, but so I would say too, deal with China cautiously and strategically. I would advise companies to put strategy ahead of structure. Surprisingly, we still see a lot of companies jump headfirst into China and build out their structure before they really have a strategy. And to keep in mind that it's a fluid place and things are changing constantly, and to keep aware of that.